What's up, everybody? Tyler Caldwell here for SmokingPipes.com. I am with the man himself, Mr. Tim Ozgener, and today we're going to go over the Behind the Blend, which is going to be some Puritos we have here, discussing the blend of two excellent cigars made by this man right here.
So, thank you. Thanks very well. I mean, and Tyler, it's been really fun to spend a couple of days with you and with your stores and clients so Behind the Blend started because in our previous brand CAO we had a lot of different blends, a lot of different tobaccos we had 40 different tobaccos from 21 different like countries, or regions, and so how do you keep up with all that? So my father would always be like, write it down. Einstein wrote it down, and you are no Einstein. I'm like, thanks a lot, Dad. So I would write down what all these blends were, and I also wanted to know what all these tobaccos tasted like on their own. So it's almost like, think of it like spices in your spice cabinet.
Sure.
You have to know what like cumin, cinnamon, black pepper, white pepper taste like on their own, so that you have like a frame of reference of how do you kind of combine these, and then once you combine them, you let them kind of marry, and then you let them sort of age. And I always equate that as slow cooking. So this is sort of a exercise as to what I do for myself on how I kind of keep track with all the different tobaccos.
Right.
And then you try to imagine how they combine. So in this case, like, we did write it down and put it in this booklet. The booklet has the different tobaccos, and you want to try them?
Absolutely.
I mean, we have them coded. The first one we have is a Jalapa Seco from Nicaragua. So we have 4 different Puritos. So these are not cigars. These are 100% tobacco from one region, from one position on the plant, from one area, because it has to do with like the microclimate and the soil. So this one is coded NJA. N as in Nancy, J as in jump, A as in apple, and this is Seco from the bottom third of the plant. And it's just almost as if I'm buying the tobacco from you, you're the farmer, and I go to buy it from you. You will smell the tobacco, look at it, and you'll be like, okay, let me roll it up, and let's smoke it.
Try it out right here
now. That's what we're doing right now.
Cool, let's do it.
So things that to think about when you smoke it is that, well, obviously first off, the appearance, like what does the tobacco look like? Although that's really not primary to this tasting. It's more about like kind of the flavor.
Right.
Like, how is it on your palate? Do you taste more sweetness or spice? And then does it make your palate salivate, or does it dry your palate, or what's that experience like?
I would say there's a nice how can I say this? Like a juicy, fruity, sweet kind of profile.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a little bit of like a creamy, like a gummy, like a fruit gummy kind of flavor profile going with it.
Right. I mean, for me, Jalapa is a region that I like a lot in Nicaragua. So, I mean, if you think of like Esteli, more like kind of like on the north, Managua is like on the more on the western part, southwestern part of the country. You fly in there, you drive about 2 hours northeast inland to get to Esteli, where all the factories are, and over there the soil is like very volcanic and asphalt black, and it formulates to your hands, very clay-like, produces more of a spicier, stronger tobacco for the most part. And then you drive another approximately 2 hours northwest of that towards the border of Honduras, and you get to Jalapa. And over there at higher elevations, they're growing coffee, and the soil is finer, sandier, browner. Then they're lower elevations, they're growing this tobacco. But Jalapa is well known for having a tobacco that has this really nice, earthy sweetness to it.
Sure.
And a lot of times when you're smoking this, you can kind of pick it up towards the back end of your tongue.
Yeah, you can definitely get that earthy tone with it as well. Like, and this might sound weird, but it's like that earthy, like almost like metallic
Yeah.
kind of like feel to the flavor of it. Like, it's very interesting.
Well, and a lot of times, when I'm talking to Ernesto Carrillo about this, he said that a lot of people use this as like kind of the relleno, meaning like almost like the base layer when you're creating a blend.
Yeah.
So it's almost, I like to think of it, a lot of it is I equate it to like cooking or wine, because I find this in a lot of ways, tobacco for cigars, very similar to wine. It has to do with the soil, what are the nutrients of the soil, how that's traveling through the vine or through the stalk for cigars,
Sure.
and then into the leaf or into the grape if it's wines. And I'm also amazed at the amount of effort. There are people in these sun-drenched fields that are very hot. I remember in Jalapa, I saw it, and the man was covered, his face, his head,
Right.
and it was scorching hot. And all he's doing is he's breaking off suckers or small little kind of leaf growth blitz that they do not want to take away from the nutrients that are going into the principal leaf.
Sure.
And that's all his job is in this kind of huge field that's so hot all day.
Yeah.
That's all he's doing. And that's just so that you're getting kind of the full benefits of that microclimate and the soil into what we're smoking. So I think that's quite kind of extraordinary, that the amount of labor that goes into that.
It's always like eye-opening hearing things like that, because you don't know what these guys are going through and the detrimental times that they're dealing with for us to sit here and spend money and enjoy something. And you find people who can sit here and argue and talk bad about this.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is an art form. Like, there was an artist out there working his butt off
Right.
to make sure that you can enjoy this. So, like, appreciate it a little more.
Well, and in this case, Jalapa having that kind of, sweetness or base level that you can use. I always say, like, again, to use the cooking analogy, is that if you're making a stew, what's your base broth? Is it chicken, beef, vegetable broth? What are you using that you're going to add more ingredients to build upon that base level of flavor?
Sure.
So that a lot of times I find is Jalapa is kind of great for that because of its almost like soft, subtle sweetness that you get from that.
Yeah.
And this also from Seco, it's like, I think of the Seco in thirds. Seco, Viso, Ligero, as far as like the positioning on the plant.
Right.
And the Seco as being the bottom third, further from the sun, is a thinner leaf, better combustibility. So you notice when we're smoking this, the ease in which we're smoking it. We're not having to relight it. It's bringing like wafts full of smoke, so it's nice. Now,
And burns very well for being just kind of bunched up like that.
Yeah. Now, what I'll say now is we'll come back to this, but we can go to the next one now, which is, and in this tasting, just for fun of it, we could just do all Nicaragua for this tasting, no problem. But I thought it'd be interesting that we explore 4 different countries and 4 different regions.
Okay.
So this next one is Ecuador, Habana 2000 seed. So, and this is actually, now we're moving up on the position to more of the Viso position on the plant. But this is actually the type of tobacco that we may use on wrapper. This could be used for wrapper, some for wrapper quality, some for like binder on this.
Sure.
But this particular one we actually use for wrapper. So we can light that one up
I'm down.
now.
Very much different.
Yeah.
Very much different.
Well, and my father would always say, like, tobacco is like a combination of art and science. Right? There's a certain science with how the tobacco is prepared ultimately to when we can smoke it. But what we're doing now is really kind of more about the art. You know, how does it taste, and how do you kind of combine them, and how do you imagine combining them? You know, I mean, I'm certainly not the expert at the science of tobacco. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not, you know, a geneticist that's, you know, splicing seeds or anything like this. But, you know, I know this is EH2 Havana 2000, so it's a Havana 2000 seed. It was a seed that was spliced so that it could be successful against resistance to blue mold or black shank, you know, funguses that could devastate, you know, tobacco fields, and also that it's easier to work with, easier to ferment, not as kind of, you know, bitter of a taste, but also like a unique flavor to it as well. And this is grown in Ecuador, you know, near where they have this river called the Mosul River, which typically in these countries, because of their latitude, you know, kind of closer to the equator, there are really two seasons, the rainy season or not. And during the rainy season, this river tends to flood, and then the erosion from some of the hillsides nearby go into these fields that provide a unique pH level to the soil over there that provides kind of the flavor that we're tasting.
Okay. But very interesting.
But I'm curious, what are you getting from this?
This one has, the best way I can describe it, like it's earthy like the first one, but like in a completely different tone. Like this one is, the earth tone is like more forward, more pungent.
Yeah.
It's got a, I don't want to say like a dirty taste, but if that makes sense. Like,
yeah. To me, it's like
good.
Sharper in the retrohale.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like more
definitely a
it's
lot
stingy.
It's thicker. There's a lot more heaviness to it.
Yeah. And also, you know, again, to go to the kind of the wine or bourbon analogy, sometimes when you're tasting, like for example, bourbon, and you can taste some of the barrel or some of the wood notes, the oak. I get that from here. I don't know if you get that where you can taste some of the woodiness.
Right. No, absolutely. There's like, it's like the smell of like burning cedar for me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because some people, when I've done these, they say oak. Some people even say pine, but maybe that has to do with that kind of the cedar aroma that you're picking up from it.
Very good.
Also, this one to me is a bit more making my palate salivate a bit more than the first one that we smoked.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which is an important quality, because if this is, so in the format that this is in now, it's a bit rough looking, but what happens is that, you know, when, you know, you're going to be preparing this for a cigar and you buy it and then you want to ferment it longer, then as you ferment it, then it turns a bit kind of darker and the veins disappear, right, and evaporate a bit more. So this is actually the same wrapper as this.
Interesting.
Except this has more fermentation after this has been acquired from, you know, the tobacco grower.
Okay.
Then the factory owner will say, I want to ferment it even longer. If they can ferment it even longer, it depends on, you know, also like the texture and the thinness of the material. Now, some people like to combine these two together and say, what do these taste like when, and again, this kind of goes to the whole concept of blending. You're not going to do this all the time. You want to be able to like imagine what would these taste like combined. But since we have them both and they're already like kind of rolled here, it's kind of fun to, at the risk of looking goofy, but.
Oh, I'm a natural for that.
I mean, then you can taste directly how these two tobaccos combine, and does it work, does it not, how do they kind of go together?
You know that with the Ecuadorian Habano, that dirty, earthy feel that I was describing, mixed with that like gummy fruitiness.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just, it's interesting. It's interesting knowing that I've smoked, plenty of these cigars already, and now being able to like smoke it in separation at the same time. It gives you like a whole different characteristic of what the blend turns out to be. It's very interesting.
And what's interesting also is that the sharpness that you pick up in the nose of the Ecuador Habana 2000, and then kind of almost like I like to say the powdered sugary sweetness that you get from the Nicaraguan Jalapa, you combine them together, or like you said, kind of almost like that the juicy like gummy or juicy fruit-esque type of gummy. When you combine them, they kind of like this softens kind of like the sharp tones of this, and they kind of you have this combination of like the woodiness and the sweetness, and then it kind of is reminiscent in some regard, I think, to like the same flavor profile that you might get from a bourbon, because you have like bourbon has like a little bit of that sweetness because of the corn. And then also you get the woodiness from the barrel. So I find it to be a lot of ways parallel to that.
Sure. I can totally get that.
Yeah. Now, so this one, the Bosphorus, is so if these are two that we're smoking, right, this Bosphorus blend has, the EH2 is the wrapper, except it has the benefit of more fermentation on it.
Okay.
Now this has a double binder, right? One of the binders is NJA. The other binder is Connecticut Ecuador, but like binder quality. So a bit rougher looking, a bit thinner, so it helps with the burn and the combustibility of it. And then the filler, we also have again NJA in there for the filler, Jalapa. We also have Esteli Ligero in there, or Esteli tobacco in there, so it gives it a bit more of that peppery nature to it. And then we have some Omotepe tobacco, which is a volcanic island in Nicaragua. So you have, really in this one, gosh, six different kind of tobaccos in here. That or you could say NJA is the same tobacco, but they're placed in different areas. One for binder, one for filler.
Okay.
But also, these have been combined, and it's been box pressed, and then it's been aging in an aging room for it's 70% humidity, 70 degrees, Spanish cedar, and it's allowed to kind of age and rest in there. So after the tobaccos have gone through a lot of different kind of combining, you want them to kind of allow time to marry, or almost like slow cooking. And when you slow cook something at that kind of temperature and percentage humidity, then it becomes a whole, these are two separate organisms. Now this is like combined to become a totally different flavor profile or organism.
Right. Yeah. Let's go ahead and line it up.
Yeah.
Right out the bat, I can get that like gummy sweetness, but like a little bit of like a tangy profile.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And also like in the retrohale right away, there's a bit of that sharpness that you get from like the EH2. But the whole objective, what I like for our cigars is I've always wanted to start off with like a bit of a bank, so that you get people's attention and the cigar is saying, okay, pay attention to me for a second. Okay, so.
Right. Oh man, really, when you put it all together, and especially like you said, like it's box pressed, it's been aging, it's had time to marinate with all the oils and the minerals of all the tobaccos just kind of combining into each other, and it's just very unique flavor.
Yeah.
Like it's not something that I would say I taste in very many cigars. And that's to me that's always a compliment.
Well, and this one is like a Rothschild size, right? It's like 4x50, and it was sort of aimed at, let's have a premium cigar experience, but in like 20 to 30 minutes.
Right.
So, and also because of the ring gauge, I view this one as almost like, I like double espressos, where you have a lot of concentration of the bean and less of the water. So it's very dense. So this flavor profile kind of like, I think, delivers that type of experience.
I could see that.
If you go to sometimes a bigger ring gauge, or like, for example, in this one, we have almost like a Churchill-esque type of a size, that it's a 54 ring gauge, more like 6.5. Because it's got a larger ring gauge and has longer for the smoke to go through, that is actually less of a intense and has more of an accentuation on the jalapa sweetness. Whereas this one has, you can taste like the intensity of all of these tobaccos.
Absolutely. Intensity, and intense would be a word I would use for this one.
Yeah.
In a very good way.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
It's got a, like this sweet, tangy, like almost like barbecue sauce kind of thing going along with it. Like,
yeah, very good. Yeah, 100%. I never thought about it that way, but I mean, that's good. You must be drinking a lot of barbecue sauce.
Well, I do what I can. Very nice, very nice.
So now this is just for us, like, to have fun with and taste kind of different aspects and see what rolls. Again, we just smoked these two of 6 on their own. So you can taste that it's more of a complex thing, like we were talking about. Now, next, we're going to go to a different kind of... Normally, I have people cleanse their palates, but you and I are experienced veteran guys. We don't need to do that. We
Don't give me any credit, please.
So now we jump on to... We went from, like, the Seco plant, the Seco portion of the tobacco in Nicaragua. We moved up the plant to smoke some Viso leaves that are more like wrapper quality from Ecuador. Now we're going to go to the top third of the plant, the Ligero portion of the plant, and we're going to go to Dominican Republic. This is a Corojo 99 seed.
Okay.
That is, it's grown in an area of Dominican that's called La Canela, which is, towards like central northern part of the country, about an hour west of Santiago, where a lot of factories are. But you notice when you look at this right away, I mean, how does it look? I mean, mine is very rough looking.
It's also like it's got a lot more like thickness to the texture.
Oh yeah,
compared to the other two.
Oh yeah, yours is very rough looking. I mean, there is no way that you would ever want to have this as like the wrapper of a cigar. I mean, because people would look at it and they'd be like, "What's
like this? This looks like how I feel most mornings when I wake up."
Tyler is feeling rough. So, but this field in Dominican Republic, La Canela, I mean, it's got a lot of sun, very intense. Not much water here, so the tobacco is seeking the water. It's got a little bit. Sometimes the stem of the leaves. Not the stem, the stalk of the plant, maybe a little bit kind of thinner than average, but I mean, it is a plant that is has a lot of intense flavor that's going through the stalk and into the leaves.
Definitely a nice, like zesty floral. I don't want to say lavender, but maybe like a touch of like that sweet, like lavendery, like zestiness.
First off, when I blow it out of my nose, the retrohale, very intense. In doing a bit of due diligence and research around this, I'm going to talk to as many of the farmers and growers as possible, or even a lot of the tobacco producers. So, for this one, Ernesto is saying he picks up a lot of like malted flavors.
I can get that.
Malted and also pepper. So I do pick up those from that. It's almost like it's a bit of a a layering on the back of your palate? You know,
Yes,
do you feel like kind of
absolutely.
a film?
I was gonna say like it's a flavor that just lingers right
Mhm.
there, like in the middle of my tongue, and like it's like a I mean, it's like a carpet of zestiness right now.
Even if you look at the smoke has kind of got this bluish. You
Yeah, I
see
was
this
just
kind of color?
like as you were saying that, my first thought was like you can even tell the difference of the color of smoke going from
Yeah.
each one of these as well.
But look at how yours is burning, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you're almost having to like relight it again. And I mean, so you can imagine, uh, you know, when you're making a cigar, you know, the ligeros, as you move up on the plant and they get thicker, then, I mean, you would not want to have this, for example, on the outside of the cigar. If you're looking at the cigar from like a bird's eye view, if you had this tobacco on the outer layer of the cigar and you had the NJA in the middle, then what would happen is that you'd have the middle of the cigar burning faster
Mm.
than the outside. And therefore you get this kind of tunneling that you hear
Sure.
of the cigars. A part of it is that, you know, my father being an engineer, we were always interested in like, you know, you get to the science, like the engineering of a cigar. So for example, we wanted to have all of our cigars draw tested. It was a machine that could just test the airflow through the cigar. So that, because we wanted everybody to have a cigar that drew well, I also wanted to have, is there a machinery that can sense where the thickest tobacco is placed in the cigar? Because if it's not exactly in the middle, which sometimes it's all made human hands, so
Right.
sometimes there's a little bit of a plus or minus error quotient, then you could have one side of the cigar burning maybe a little bit faster than the other, and therefore when you ash it, you know, you see the cherry of the cigar. I mean, that's like usually the slowest burning tobacco. That's what's represented
Right.
there.
Very cool.
Now, we'll do a quick pivot on that, so I'll put that down. And then the last one we're going to smoke is Mexican San Andreas, MSA. So,
Personal favorite of mine.
oh yeah. No, it's a material, it's a wrapper that has become very popular, especially over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like 20 years ago, there was a bit of like almost like a stigma, like where people like in New York, for example, they loved like Te Amo cigars that were
Right.
like Mexican cigars and like primarily, but people that might have been in other regions of the country didn't like it as much. Now this has become like a universally like respected and
Right.
admired. I mean, so they've done a really great job of like, you know, quality and reputation, you know, globally.
Mm-hmm.
So for this, you know, this is again, we're going from like Ligero now back down to like the Viso, but from the upper Viso portion of the plant. And this
Sure.
is like a wrapper quality coming from the Torrent family, an amazing family that's been doing this for like 3 generations. So I spoke to a gentleman from the 3rd generation of the Torrent family for over an hour on the phone about his tobacco. It's coming from, you know, a region in, you know, San Andreas that it's not like on the water, but it's like more inland from that. But it's more on like along the southeastern kind of, you know, coastline in Mexico. Again, not on the coastline, further inland, but it's surrounded by dormant volcanoes in a valley. The soil there is like, you know, asphalt black, you know, volcanic, and it yields this flavor that we're about to try.
All right.
And again, when Ernesto, in this particular case, because Ernesto Grillo is who we're working with on these blends, when he's buying the cigars, the tobacco from the Torrent family, they're prepared for 6 months before he buys them, which he appreciates. I mean, he ferments this even more for wrappers. So I mean, this is what you see here is the same as what eventually this Aramas blend of Oz family cigars becomes. So you can notice like the differential is that it's a bit more, the veins are less pronounced and it's smoother and it's a little bit darker. But the flavor, what is the flavor that you pick up from this, Tyler?
For me, San Andreas tobacco normally has kind of like an espresso, like creamy chocolatey.
Yeah.
To me, this is a little more peppery
Mm-hmm.
than I expect out of
Yeah.
Mexican San Andreas. But also, it has like a very like crisp
Mm-hmm.
tone to it.
Uh-huh.
Like very, very crisp, especially on the retro.
What's interesting to me about this is that how this kind of begins. It begins like very sharp on the retro, but then as you get into it, it kind of it settles a bit more.
Right.
And then you can kind of really explore the complexity of flavor, because I don't find this to be, some of the other ones we might have smoked might have been more singular in the flavor. I find this one to be, of the ones that we've smoked, to be the most complex flavor on its own.
That. Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, I do pick up what you're saying with like the dark chocolate and espresso, but there's something, a bit of a layered component to this. Now, what's interesting is when I've done this in the past, and this happened organically at a tasting I went to, is that the consumer said, light this MSA and then the Dominican Corojo at the same time, or combine them like we did earlier and see what that does. Now you probably have to relight the Ligero again just because it's so thick.
They blend really, really well into each other. Like that thick, spicy tone from the Ligero. Now it actually enhances, like the spiciness that I had in the San Andreas isn't there.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting more of that chocolatey, creamy tone that I'm used to.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's sort of like, I view it as like the Reese's peanut butter experiment when you like dip the chocolate, the peanut butter, like, wait a minute, that combination works. This one, the any of the kind of sharpness or harshness that you were talking about is a bit kind of tempered now, and it becomes like a combination of, you know what I mean, that it somehow works, right? You get like the these combination of flavors.
Yeah.
You can see how they kind of complement one another.
And the combination of the two for me has brought out this like tart, like strawberry-esque flavor into the Ligero.
Yeah, I get that. And again, these are just so like, when you write these down and you have like notes that you refer to, we did this experimentation because again, I'd done it before during my CAO days, and I wanted to do it again. I went down with some of our sales team down to Dominican Republic 2 years ago, and I had asked for Ernesto Carrillo to do the same experimentation. So we did this, but we might have done this with honestly like maybe 16 different tobaccos, you can imagine. So we had to do that over 2 days, but he had us rate it from like 1 to 5. Like 1 meaning I liked it least, 5 meaning most. But I had another column where I would write down what I'm tasting, and also what is it causing my palate to do? Is
Right.
it drying my palate? Is it salivating? Is it pungent? And then also like what kind of flavors for me that I was picking up from it. Was it more vegetal? Is it more sweet? Is it more peppery? Basically.
Very, very interesting, man.
Now then, when you this last cigar has the MSA, but this is MSA that has been further fermented still. The binder on it is Sumatra seed Ecuador.
Okay.
And then the fillers you have the DCO we just smoked, but that's like in the middle of the blend because of, what we just experienced, the combustibility. Also, we have the NJA, the very first one we smoked, but instead of it being from the Seco position, it's more from the Viso position of the plant, the lower Viso. And then we have a half leaf of Connecticut broadleaf Maduro in the filler just to give it a little bit of a more Maduro accentuation to complement it all.
Okay.
And after this has been made, we let this rest in the aging room an additional 30 days. So it's basically got 60 days age.
Okay.
And the more that, darker tobaccos that you use, the longer that you can age it because it helps kind of, complement and also it will mellow.
Okay.
So we wanted to call it Arat, but we couldn't because the name was already trademarked.
Sure.
And then people in Armenia call it Masis. That name was trademarked. So we just took the prefix of Arat and Masis and thus the name Aramas on this one.
Very cool.
The first one we smoked was Bosphorus, and that's named after the strait in Istanbul where my father was raised, Armenian, born and raised in Istanbul. And that's where like the strait that separates Europe from Asia. We're Asia Minor. So the question is, can you taste elements of like the last two that we smoked?
Yes.
In this.
Definitely the Ligero.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I said, like I got a little bit more of that like tart fruitiness.
Yeah.
And now I can pick some of that up in the final form as well. So let me ask you, you've got all this selection of fine tobacco. Once you've got like the final product made, do you ever go to the final product and maybe it's like, I wonder what this would be like with just a little bit more Ligero? Do you play with that as well?
No, that's a great question, but I haven't done that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because the other day when we did this, you had some of your customers that were like, oh, maybe I should smoke all four of these at one time.
Right.
Which I haven't done that yet.
Right.
But I mean, you could experiment. But
That could be another blend down the road right there for you.
well, it's also interesting to think about like, what are these elements when you look at your notes? Then you have to kind of, again, this is using more of the art component. I always like to say that cigar making is an art, just like you can view winemaking as an art.
Right.
So then as you get accustomed to these and you understand what characteristics they present on their own, then you try to use your imagination, but in this case with your palate, and try to imagine if you combine some of these. And then further still, then it's like a matter of, like we experienced, to smoke a 50 ring gauge versus like a 60 ring gauge. How do you want to balance these proportions? So then how does the 60 ring gauge experience differ from a 50 ring gauge? Or how do you want it to differ to somebody that's smoking
There's so many
it?
different little tiny variables that could
Yeah.
change everything from size to size, blend to blend. I think consumers out there, if there's anything that I would want someone to get from this, is learning that you might buy a cigar from anywhere from $8 to $15 on an average cigar in today's time. It's a work of art, like you said. Like it needs to be appreciated. And I always tell people, like, you're not just smoking a product, you're smoking an experience.
Yeah, and also to me it has to do with with cigars. The whole point is to deliver the optimum flavor that you're getting from all of these regions and all of these fields. So once the tobacco is picked, it's hung in the barn, the chlorophyll drains from the tobacco, and then it's fermented multiple times so that you have, a thin carbon ring. That's where like the ash meets the wrapper. That black ring is the carbon ring. That tells you that it's been fermented as long as it possibly could have. You're getting the maximum potential out of every single one of those leaves that are combined to make the cigar, so that you're getting, it's not about the nicotine. I mean, because that's more, there are other tobacco products where the nicotine delivery is like what it's made for.
Mm-hmm.
This one, it's made for the flavor, very similar to like, wines or like single malt scotches or, finer bourbons. It's about kind of the delivery of like that flavor. And then you add things like the blending and how you combine them and the proportionality of it. So that's why it's like a really interesting. A science meets art. Do you know it? I would say.
Awesome. Well, I gotta say, this has been a really eye-opening experience, being able to do something like this. And I appreciate you taking the time out and educating me as well as the masses watching. And
yeah. Well, thank you very much. And, hopefully people experience it on their own, or you pick up one. My whole thing is that if somebody picks up one thing from something that they learned, then it's great. Then we did our job here.
There you go. Hopefully everyone watching learns that Oz Family is a brand that you should check out, and don't miss the boat on them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
No problem.